Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar hosted in association with PaxLife. My name is Katrina Handley and I'm the project director for the World Passenger Festival. And it is my pleasure today to introduce Ralph Cabos, who is from PaxLife Innovations, and he will be exploring the topic of in-vehicle Wi-Fi systems and how the experience of passengers can be optimized with onboard entertainment. This webinar is live and interactive, and Ralph is very keen to take questions after the presentation. So if you do have any questions, please submit them at any time on the platform and we'll get around to them at the end of the presentation. So Ralph, over to you.
Thank you, Katrina. Okay, let's jump straight in. I'd just like to say a few words about our company. Oops. Okay. PaxLife Innovations has quite some background in providing digital infrastructure services for vehicles. In fact, we used to operate on board of aircraft. We've done in-flight entertainment systems, and we are today focusing on systems on board rail and bus. But we don't actually do the entire system. We focus, as I said, on digital infrastructure services, so software that is sitting inside the vehicle that improves the experience of your onboard system. And so it's a pleasure for me today to talk about Wi-Fi and in particular, a point that is frequently brought up in the context of passenger experience. How can we get more out of the Wi-Fi we have installed on board of the vehicles? And to get a little bit of background on this topic of Wi-Fi, obviously there is a large number of Wi-Fi installations already in vehicles in Europe worldwide. Why is that the case? Obviously because our passengers, our customers are demanding it. That's why the systems are there. And I'm pretty sure those of you who are operating the vehicles will have spent, well, kind of a fortune to bring the latest and best gear to meet passenger demands and make your passengers happy. Now, at the same time, there is also another phenomenon that you keep investing into new infrastructure, and a couple of years later, well, it seems like the expectations have changed. Why is that so? There is a number maybe just that's worthwhile exploring as we are starting this presentation. And this is a link to how has media consumption patterns, how have those patterns changed in the last years? If we take a look, for example, at the year 2010, 10 years ago, there have been a total number of 300,000 subscriptions to streaming platforms in Europe. 10 years later, last year, in Europe, we had a whopping 140 million subscriptions. And I think it's this number that best expresses the shift away from linear TV towards different forms of media consumption. And there is actually another number that is worth noting, that in the same time frame, the target to which it's delivered, so the device on which people are requesting those streams, is no longer predominantly the smart TV at home, but in actual fact, in Germany, for example, last year, 50% of those streams got delivered to mobile devices. Now, you have a mobile device, you use it while you're traveling. And in fact, it's this one key argument that when you travel on a train or you travel on a bus, you got time for yourself and you can enjoy. Well, that's exactly the moment where you would use your mobile device and enjoy entertainment. And this is why it's very, very important when we discuss Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi delivery to also discuss user expectations as they are shifting in the same way as the media consumption patterns are changing. What worked extremely well 5 years ago in terms of Wi-Fi delivery really does cut no ice anymore with the younger generation today, and we need to keep that in the back of our mind. So what is our approach at PaxLife Innovation to tackle this challenge? Now, maybe just to say a few words up front, what we don't do, we don't sell you yet another router or even better networks inside your train. or better access points. There's plenty of excellent providers and experts in the market. We are focusing on one specialty. And this is to, in fact, help you to free up bandwidth on your Wi-Fi router, because the critical link is, in fact, the link between the vehicle, the train, and the land site. Free up bandwidth while at the same time giving you more use and better experience inside the train. Now, how do we do that? Is this an expensive, complex exercise? Well, actually, it's not, because in the simplest case, you can just simply take a piece of software. We'll provide a module, install that module into your router, or add a virtual machine that you can add to a server that you already have on board of your train, and you enjoy all the benefits of improving the passenger experience. And in a way, if you combine your investment into Wi-Fi infrastructure on board of your train with getting more out of this is our contribution to make rail and public transport in particular, in general, the preferred mode of transport for the future. So let us take a closer look at how this works. I have a very, very simple graphic here that sort of explains the underlying principle. Now, the Wi-Fi system today, any Wi-Fi system today, consists out of two components. There is the router, can be one or many, that is installed in the train, that provides the connectivity between the landside network, mobile phone, mobile data network, and the train. Then there is the intranet, which is this line here. And within the train, you have a couple of access points installed. I said configurations vary. There is vendors out in the market that can provide intranets with whopping speeds. There is strategies to have more and more routers on your train. Obviously, there is routers there that have more than just one SIM card. There is, in fact, many SIM cards you could fit. But at the end of the day, it's all a matter of cost, not just investment cost, but also operating cost. How are those systems used? Well, very simple. The end user is the passenger with their mobile device. That's always the same. And, you know, as I said just before, 2 slides ago, passenger media consumption patterns have changed. You can expect your passenger to make their own choice, what they want to watch, which app they want to use. So they're going to set up a stream. It can be an on-demand video. It can be a live stream. It doesn't really matter. That stream is going to hit your intranet, and then it's going to hit your router and your link to the land side. So this means if, let's say, on your train, you have 100 people watching live video, you are blocking 100 streams on your intranet. That's the easy bit. And then as well on your landside link. So obviously the cost effect and the question of how viable is this is a matter that needs to be looked more in detail. And the principle is always the same, whether you have a landside network of 4G or 5G, or sometimes 4G and sometimes 5G, or maybe some spots in between where there's no coverage. What you use is for demand, end users and streams. So this is the limit you'll have to face. Whatever gimmicks, it's still the same behind it. So what do we do to address this topic? Now, what we do is to add one additional delivery path. This delivery path is depicted, is shown here as this blue box underneath the router. So what does this mean? I'll explain the products in a while, but effectively what this additional function does is you are plugging it into the router. So as I said, it can be a piece of software that's added to the router. It can be a piece of software that is added to a server that you have on the train. It can be a box that you're adding and plug into the switch that you have on board. There can be different setups. And in this case, what happens is that there is now 2 ways to deliver content. Obviously, you can still have a stream requested from the outside, but also now what you can do is you have app delivery that you can enable via this blue box here. And I'll explain how that works, as I said, in a while. So effectively, if an app, let's say passenger's favorite media streaming app, is supported by this little blue box, by this node inside the train, the delivery happens locally on the train only, and is no longer loading your link to the outside. So just imagine you have two apps that are cached inside. Those two apps represent, let's say, 20% of the video demand. Then effectively, the only thing that matters is how much bandwidth do you have on the intranet? How good are your access points? If those are working well, you have virtually no limit. I mean, the limit is the intranet speed effectively and the quality of your Wi-Fi. But you are no longer dependent on the performance of your cellular modems on the router. In fact, the solution that we are providing supports both on-demand services as well as live streaming services. Now you may wonder immediately, okay, so how does the content get onto the train in the first place? There has to be some way. Well, yes, of course. So you can see there's two instances you need to look at. You can see this little arrow here on the left. In the case of on-demand, we use a caching mechanism. We'll explain that later. And we provide a burst sync linkage that gets installed into the train. It can be using Wi-Fi 6 technology, depending on where you operate and how you operate. And at certain points during the journey, or maybe at the end points of the train, we are refreshing the cache, so we don't load your 4G or your 5G. If your passengers are predominantly watching live content, then obviously there has to be a live delivery while the train runs. So this means there has to be at least one linkage through the cellular modem. But in our case, no matter how many times the stream is requested, there's always only a maximum of one outside stream that hits your train. So you're actually minimizing the load. But if you want to do real-time live, obviously, it has to be some live outside link. So that is the principle of how our solutions work. And in fact, as I mentioned, it works on demand, it works live, it works with subscription-based services, but it also works with advertisement-based free services, so-called AVOD. Now let us go through one by one the different product offerings that we propose to in fact help you out in providing a better experience and getting more out of the Wi-Fi that you have installed on your train. First, let's take a look at PackStream. PackStream, in fact, is the most simple to install and manage product that we have. As I mentioned before, a number of times, it is, in fact, a piece of software, sits in a container. You add it to your router. If you want, you can have it running on a central server somewhere, never mind. We will provide this service and operate it. Now, what does it do? It manages and combines the streams requested by the users in the train. So let's say if you have a total number of 10, 15, 20 live channels that passengers would like to watch, as soon as a channel is set up, we will support it. If the second person joins, they will in fact be served internally, not requesting a second stream externally. Now, on top of that, what the system does, it memorizes the journey of the train. It matches it intelligently with the performance of your system. It has a little database that after a couple of journeys is built. And so in this way, we can cleverly manage, handle buffering, etc., to get the maximum out of the network around your train. Of course, if there is no 4G, then we can't help it. But if there is just a couple of minutes, no 4G or bad 4G, it's not so bad. We can still cover it. So it gives you overall a very reliable live operation. There is a significant improvement in terms of user experience, and there is not a single piece of hardware you need to buy extra. Now, by the way, as I said before, it works for TV. You can obviously stream live audio. Let's say there is a football championship happening and you want to have it both on audio and TV, possible. You can have advertisement-based services. You can have the tie-in with the advertisement delivery. That's all supported by that piece of software. Now, second item, I have mentioned the SVOD before, subscription-based on-demand services. Obviously, it can also be free public TV, for example, Mediatek offerings, same way. How would that work? That is a topic that, in fact, uses a concept that is called CDN, Content Delivery Network. Most of you will know it, but for sure, every one of you has used it, whether you have noticed it or not. Let me just explain the concept, how this works. So let us assume on the top right-hand part of this image, you are at home, you have your smart TV or you have your mobile device at home, it doesn't matter. You use a public TV app, a Mediatek app, or your favorite SVOD app or based on a subscription. You request the stream, so you fire a request to the source of the provider, which is here. And you would expect that the delivery happens back to your screen. But without you or your device noticing, what happens in actual fact is that there is a couple of invisible, if you want, staging points. These are cache servers operated by CDN providers. They're usually based in the data centers of your local ISP. And so what happens is the streams are cached in those cache servers. When you request from the source, the actual delivery is shifted to the front haul part, which means it's shifted closer to your house. Because let's say you have more bandwidth capability in the last mile, normally in fixed installations, than you have in the World Wide Web. So in fact, what we are doing, or what we have done, is we have taken exactly this piece of logic and shrunk it a bit and turn it into a mobile embedded CDN. So it's the embedded one, the green thing here, works exactly the same way as the gray one or the light blue one here on the left. So this means you take your tablet that works at home with your Mediatek app or your streaming app, and you start the same app on the tablet in the train during your journey, and the CDN is fitted. Well, then what actually happens that instead of getting the delivery from the last staging point on the land side, where you then have to cross 4G, 5G, the actual delivery happens entirely in the vehicle. So you can see that no matter how many requests people in the train fire, and if they end all fire for high capacity, HD or even higher capacity than that, 4K, then in fact, you will probably not notice any effect because it's just the intranet performance. As said, you need to have good access points, but apart from that, you will not be loading your 4G or your 5G. So again, very obviously, we are shifting the delivery of the media data to the front haul, just the front haul is sitting in the rail vehicle. So that's why obviously we're calling the corresponding product PAX CDN. PAX CDN, in fact, helps you by reducing the 4G, 5G load for every single app that is supported by the CDN. So the more apps you allow to operate on your embedded CDN, the more offloading effect you will have. So this means that there is actually a second thing that happens because some of the operators are spending a lot of money on building media libraries and have additional entertainment choices for their passengers, only to then see in actual fact that maybe the take-up rates are a bit disappointing and they may have actually come down over the years, which is not surprising if you remember the number I've shown initially at the beginning of the presentation. Now, people want to make their own choices. They have their own apps. And what you're doing here is you are not only enabling, you are supporting, you are in fact enabling that. Let the passengers decide. And we are in effect putting the media operator into control. You don't need to spend your money or your time to license content. It's taken care of by the public TV stations, by the streaming providers. They know that business best. And besides, you're making your passenger very, very happy, because that is exactly what they are expecting. This brings me to the third product in the setup. Now that's a bit an unusual one, I have to admit. Historically, actually, PackSnap was our first rail product that we created after our aerospace experience. In fact, a rail operator has contracted us to provide live entertainment, even if there is zero 4G. Zero meaning like completely none. So there are some parts of the journey where there is just no coverage. So TV is a bit more challenging in this case, but there's actually a good solution for radio, and we've built that. And this is what this PackSnap Plus does. Effectively, you can think of it like a hybrid radio that you have in upscale cars. If you have, let's say, a more expensive car, then inside your car radio, you will probably notice that when you drive, the coverage actually is pretty good these days. You never lose the radio station like you used to do in the past. And the way they do this is that those radios in the cars, they, on the one hand side, listen on DAB+ networks, which is the broadcast networks you find in Europe. And at the same time, they are connected to the internet. And you tune a radio station, it always takes the best. And in this case, it's virtually uninterruptible. Now, we have built exactly the same thing. Now, in this case, actually, it's a bit of hardware necessary, because the little radio box that you plug into the train, you connect to the router or switch, rail certified. There is a rail approved antenna available by specialist antenna makers, so we can point you to the right sources. So it's all available and readily tested and approved. And in fact, what this gives you is up to 32 live channels in parallel. So not like in a car radio, one channel. In fact, it grabs every channel that is on the air in the vicinity of where the train operates. It puts all the streams onto your Wi-Fi for usage by your passengers. Your passengers choose by way of the apps, or they choose by way of a menu on the landing page. You decide how you want to set that up. The nice part there is not just the content is for free, but in actual fact, the DAB+ bandwidth is also for free. So you don't even pay any extra. It is just free usage. So you just need to have the thing on your bus or on your train. And it's a simple add-on to provide interesting content, to provide yet another competitive distinction in terms of the service that you are providing. Now that brings me to a brief summary. So you can see the recurring theme in all these three products, which is to get more services out of your existing Wi-Fi and intranet at less outside bandwidth usage, and a net higher service quality in terms of delivery to your passengers. So you don't need to rip out everything, you can get more out. If you plan something new, you can plan something new and get even more out of the new thing you are planning. So it's really, in many ways, the best of both worlds. It doesn't need to be a complex integration. As I said, the simplest solution plugs in as software. We will work with your appointed integrator or your vendor who has sold you the device, depending on how you want to do your projects. And it can be as simple as adding software. Now, obviously, in that context, you see it's software as a service. Yes, it's not for free. It also costs money. We also need to pay our salaries. But obviously, in this case, we have one more trick up the sleeve. This is that we can even offer you the opportunity to refinance the service because we used to operate aircraft. So this brings me to the last point, which is Pax Media. Now, Pax Media, in actual fact, provides the capability to bring advertisement onto your display screens. Now, we don't provide passenger information systems. You will have your own system on your train. And many of you on your bus, many of you will have a second display for content, or maybe the screens switch between the timetable data or next station data and some advertisement spaces. And many of you will be selling the advertisement space to local agencies or market yourself. What you usually discover is that in this market, there's not so much revenue available as you would normally hope for. Now, this is something you can actually change. As you will probably know, in terms of the advertisement world, the biggest euros is getting paid for targeted advertisement. In fact, we know that from the websites, we know that from the mobile phones, that if the person can be identified, the advertisers pay highest money. Of course, in the train, on the screen, it doesn't work, right? Now, there is actually a way to get close to the revenues. We can't identify the passengers. We don't want to. I mean, we are firmly based on the European regulations in any case. So what we are doing is we are able to provide you the access to programmatic advertisement. Programmatic means it's advertisement that is bid in the internet, that is served to the trains, dependent on where the train operates, certain environmental conditions, etc. The data will take care of that. That is kind of a bit magical, because obviously the better you qualify the data, the higher the prices you're going to get. And also what we're able to do is to solve the problem that normally in a train on a passenger information system, you can't really bid in milliseconds and show your advertisement. We take care of that problem for you as well. And we're able to sell off your advertisement space, either entirely or a fraction of that you have unsold left available if you want to try it out. So in this way, we're able to bring in euros, significant revenue for you. And in fact, if you just do the numbers and take a look at what a typical regional rail operator in Germany, for example, operates in terms of the type of trains, the number of screens, the number of the occupancy, the number of passengers, just on the average. Just to give you an idea, because you cannot really give a hard and fast number and say, well, it brings you exactly so much, because you need to look at the specific case. But what you can expect is, if this is done properly, the entire operating cost of the entire host of our services, or even the host of our services and the Wi-Fi, could be refinanced by a proper advertisement sales. Now, that is something that is very, very interesting. Obviously, it depends on many factors. And we have quite a bit of experience. As I said before, we've been operating in the airline world. And as you can imagine, nobody wants to spend expensive SATCOM cost for sending marketing messages. And so very obviously, there is different ways of doing it. Now, this brings me to the conclusion of the presentation that we have compiled. Maybe just to summarize, you can see that it's definitely offering a modular concept. We are proposing our solution not just for operators. We're happy, and in fact, happy to work with system integrators, with solution providers who want to incorporate additional functionality into their systems that they have deployed at their customers. We're most happy to discuss with you trying out one of the services that I have introduced earlier, maybe do a proof of concept, do a trial, or even just to go through the Pax Media portion and explore how realistically can this be operating in your environment, and what is the amount of revenue you could generate. Maybe just one final word to say. Katrina already mentioned this. We are going to present also our solution at the World Passenger Festival coming up later this year. And there is yet another thing we're planning to do. We're setting up a demonstrator together with a partner in Sevilla, that is Galgas in Spain. They specialize on getting extremely good throughput through your Wi-Fi access points and getting the best performance locally on your train. And in fact, what you're going to see there later this year is that in the real context of everybody using their smartphone, everybody delivering 4K, actually it can still work. So thanks a lot for your attention and for your interest. Let's see what kind of questions we have coming up. Most keen to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a few that have come through, but if anyone's got any questions that they'd like to put in, there's still time. So the first one is whether you've got any references in the market already and whether you can expand on that a little bit.
Yes, yes, we do. In fact, as I said, we are launching our services. We have a launch customer. We're in fact in the deployment right now at a regional rail operator in the east of Germany. In fact, I can mention the name. It's ODEC, Ostdeutsche Eisenbahn, where we're going to install the first trains in the later part of this year. There's a second operator in France. We're in discussion right now, and we're looking at installation dates sometime next year. So there's a bit of time ahead. There's further discussions, but those guys in the eastern part of Germany are the guys for whom we have, in fact, also developed that live radio portion, because they are hit with quite some lousy 4G infrastructure in the areas they are operating in.
Fantastic. And then are you able to offer the media solution by itself? Is that an option?
Yeah, you mean, yeah, totally. No, that's what I try to express. Each one of our offerings, the PAX Media in isolation or PAX Stream in isolation or combination, most happy to, yes, no, absolutely.
Perfect. And then one of the questions, this is from Paul Davis from Amtrak, has asked how you would differentiate PAX Life's OBE solution from other solutions that are on the market.
So you need to help me a bit with that abbreviation.
I think it means onboard experience, I assume.
Oh, onboard. Okay, well, we are not seeing ourselves as an overall solution provider. You know, for us, we really define the experience in terms of the expectation that the passenger has, that whatever they want to use on board of their travel is in fact seen around the mobile device. Now, this is the starting point. Now, the way we define our solutions is that we enable what your passengers would like to use. So we target those media solution providers that your passengers are interested in using. You don't need to have any investment in terms of media libraries. We have had, in fact, queries where people have asked us, what about hosting certain capabilities on board? We have customers looking at having certain onboard portals of their selected partners, doing some kind of accommodation booking, or let's say we have one customer with whom we are discussing currently to link up with local restaurants and have a delivery service en route, let's say at a stop, intermediate stop, you know, in half an hour, or let's say in 2 hours, I'm pulling into a train station. And to get a bit more flavor in the train, you can actually do deals with local restaurants and businesses, and they can sell to your passengers on board, accept orders, and in fact, all the meals or the goods, whatever the souvenirs, are getting delivered to your train on board. Now, this gives you the opportunity to earn some extra dollars by linking in with a local business. It's very nice for your passengers to discover. So actually what it means is we are using the capability of hosting services on board And the philosophy is that what we're saying is you need to have the flexibility in your server on board that is as good as the Amazon Web Service. Just it needs to sit in your train. And that is exactly what we have built. We actually call this rail stack. I didn't mention it, but if you take this as a basic building principle, then your onboard, the experience that your passenger get is really based on what your creativity is in terms of the digital services you would like to offer. But you don't need to just be the provider and say, well, I give you maximum 4G and leave it out to the market forces to decide. You can offer additional benefit by inviting your partners on board and adding to the passenger experience and to the services that are provided on board of your train. So we think that there is, for every product that you have, there is some creativity required, and we have the maximum flexibility to work with you and to implement the environment that you need to optimize the onboard experience. So things really like selling things, paying for things, you can all do that. It's, as I said, imagine you would be on board of a cruise ship. It doesn't really matter. You can all do that on the basis of this onboard hosting system if you want.
Very interesting. I haven't heard that idea before, and it's these sort of ideas that we need to bring people back onto the trains as we're coming out of the pandemic. So then the final question I've got here is from Eric, and he's asked if he's correct that your solution doesn't need any special hardware on the train. Is it all software?
Yes, it's correct as regards to PAX Stream. It's correct as regards to PAX Media. Now, for PAX CDN, it may be correct. It depends a bit on what you have. I mean, obviously, if you cache data on board of your train, you need to have enough capacity to cache. So if your train is fitted with a server that has enough caching capacity, yes, it's a software-only solution. If you don't have the hardware, well, you may need to add a bit of caching capacity. At the end of the day, it's like a network attached storage that you need to add. Now, for obvious reasons, the radio box, that clearly is a piece of hardware. I mean, if you fit that, then you need a receiver, and that is a little box. But all the rest, yes, software only, correct.
Okay, fantastic. So those are all the questions that I've had come in. As you mentioned, you and the team will be joining us in Amsterdam on the 5th and 6th of October at the World Passenger Festival. So if our attendees here today are interested in joining us, just go to the website and registration is open for that event. And if you have any direct questions for Ralph and the team, then I'm sure they'll be happy to hear from you after the webinar. So, their contact details should be available for you. So thank you very much for everyone to joining us. Thanks, Ralph, for that presentation. It was really insightful. And yeah, looking forward to hearing how things go over the next few months.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Katrina.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.